Welcome, Paul. If I may ask you for a few words. We Protestants, Polish Protestants, have always had an uphill battle, but no one sentenced us to prison or forced labor. This is the doing of the peace government. For the things a pastor says in his church sermons, criticizing superstitions and Catholic dogmas, criticizing the bad use of power, criticizing President Duda. For those things I was threatened with prison, and tomorrow I begin forced labor. The case of Pawel Chojecki. All of the appeals filed in this case proved to be without merit, and to a fairly obvious degree, I would say. First of all, I uphold the appealed verdict. This is not about the content presented by the defendant, who may hold a certain position towards certain religious issues, but it's in the way in which he expressed himself. So this is not a dispute of a theological nature. Rather, it's a matter of culture, language, and nothing more. My jaw dropped when the judge read and justified the sentence. I just couldn't believe what was happening. I remember the moment the judgment was issued. I won't sound optimistic, but I didn't expect too much from the Polish justice system. It was a difficult moment. I remember my first reaction. I was crying. I was in disbelief. It was a little bit like I was receiving the information in a delayed manner. It was almost like a breakdown. I kept thinking that it would be an acquittal. And so I thought to myself, what will happen next? Moronic Poland. Poles are snarky. The church is a prostitute. They look like nationalists, Catholics, but on the inside they're like a smelly, musty Russian egg. Does this content fall within freedom of expression? I didn't believe that it was possible to conduct this type of case and issue such a sentence because of the words that a pastor, also a TV editor, spoke in his church. These words, while not vulgar, were indeed very critical and harsh, but he has the right to have this type of discussion. Not everyone has to like it. Not everyone has to listen to it, and that's their freedom. I want to listen to it, and I think that as a Pole, I have the right to do so. The judge read the verdict as if the words were not his, as if he just wanted to read it as quickly as possible, because later, after he finished reading this sentence, he grabbed his head as if he was ashamed of what he had just said. Of course, he has no criminal record. He has a crystal clear reputation among his neighbors. What's there to say? That's what the probation officer wrote. Pastor Chojecki's case is one which we should observe because it's a litmus test for democracy. The fact that we try to solve this issue this way shows the quality of our public debate. I would like to see this have an impact on a larger scale. Any footnote that censors freedom of speech, freedom of expression, no matter how outrageous, I want it removed. There shouldn't be such a provision in our legal system. It's a provision that discriminates against anyone who is not Catholic. If we punish publicists and journalists for certain views, for disagreeing with something, I have a feeling that it'll have the opposite effect, because in the place of one pastor, 10 or 20 others will appear. We stand in solidarity with Paweł and we sang for him. Paweł is our friend and he is experiencing injustice.
widzieć dobro w oczach ich i szczęście, wolność. To wśród życia gór i chmur, poprzez każdy ból i mur znaleźć przejście.
The Polish state condemns a decent man to some forced labor because the bishops in power don't like what he says. First of all, it's a way to demonstrate our dissatisfaction with what's happening in Poland, that religious minorities, instead of being additionally protected, are discriminated against and even tormented and humiliated. Are you going to join Pastor Chojecki tomorrow at the open-air museum where a picket will be held? Yes, I am. Yes, we are. What are you going to do there? Protest. If there will be an opportunity to help him, we'll be happy to help. Let's get this over with quickly. I'll tell you what it's about. It's a religious and political matter. I've been sent here to carry out my sentence. What do you mean, here? I've been sentenced to forced labor in the museum. Please take a seat. I want you to know that this is quite a well-known case. Well, between the office and the museum, I know, there may be some media here and things like that. Of course, I believe that I'm innocent. This is like a Soviet show trial. I'll carry out my sentence, but I'll be anything but quiet. There may be some pickets here. Who's going to picket? People who are pissed off by this shameful verdict, which makes a criminal out of a pastor. What I can do is to not allow the sentence to be carried out here, because it's largely up to me whether or not I want it to be carried out here. Restriction of liberty for 20 hours a month. They even call it a restriction of liberty, huh? Yes, well, we call it forced labor. It was a tradition in Poland during the occupation times. So I should show up on the 18th of September. There's still a bit of time. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, on this sunny day, but unfortunately sad day when it comes to freedom of speech in our country. According to the Third Republic of Poland, I'm a criminal. I got sentenced to 8 months of forced labor. I'm supposed to begin the compulsory work today. I'm a criminal for criticizing Catholic dogmas and President Duda.
I prezydenta Dudę. Od tego wyroku
I have no further right to appeal against this verdict. This happened for the first time in history. I hope that this judicial crime, this crime on civil liberties, on the Constitution, which allegedly guarantees freedom of speech, will be noted by Poles, and that this snowball will trigger an avalanche. Why did you come all this way from Berlin to support Pastor Pawel Chojecki? I wanted to support Pastor Chojecki because this is our common cause. Freedom of speech, though very slowly, is being taken away from us. The ambience in front of the museum was good. It was my first time taking part in a picket. You could see the solidarity. You could see that we were gathered there for an important cause. After the demonstration, I and a few other friends went with Dad to the Open Air Museum's head office to begin the work. Hello, Pawel Chojecki here. I was supposed to report here today for the compulsory labor as a convict. I'm waiting by the entrance of the management office. Ladies and gentlemen, please leave the site. Only one person can stay. Is this Mr. Arthur? I would like to speak with him. Sir, I have been told by the office that only one person can stay here. I require medical care. I have a medical attestation for this, so someone must stay with me as medical help. You can pass this on to the person who issued those instructions, and we'll see what happens next. Okay, I'll pass on the information. Thank you. Thank you.
Witaj.
Good morning. Hi.
Czekam na tego pana.
I'm waiting for Mr. Arthur. Did I remember the name correctly? I don't know. The one in charge of the convicts. Convicts? I don't know. When I found out about the intentions of the prosecutor's office, I started to look for a lawyer. In Lublin, no one was willing to defend me.
Mecenas, który chciałby mnie bronić. Dzięki Bogu,
Thank God, I have an old friend, a lawyer, but he lives in Koszalin, which is on the other side of Poland.
Tak jak rozumiem, to
From what I understand here in Poland, there are no more routes of appeal left.
Normalnej drogi odwoławczej.
Będziemy musieli
We'll have to ask the ombudsman about whether it's possible to file for a
czy
cassation.
nie da się kasacji złożyć.
Bo tylko on, rozumiem.
So he's the only one who can file a cassation appeal to the Supreme Court.
No, jest taka jedna
There is this one more
się
possibility
zastanawiam, bo
that comes to mind because it
wydaje mi
seems
się,
to me
że
that the court was
sąd
improperly
niewłaściwie
staffed,
obsadzony. Ale to na skutek
which is a result of COVID
COVID-owych.
regulations,
Jest taka sytuacja,
where the
że
court
sąd
has become a single-person
jednoosobowy.
court.
Sąd
The
Najwyższy
Supreme
w sprawach
Court has
cywilnych
found that the single-person composition of the court regarding civil matters is unsuitable, and therefore this could be a basis for cassation. So even if we file this cassation, it goes through the ombudsman and the Minister of Justice, who in fact initiated all of this. He will for sure help us. Of course he will, it's obvious. So eventually we could get a cassation either through the ombudsman or on the basis that there was only one judge instead of three, yes. But the verdict is still in force despite these infringements. The verdict is final. There is still the European route. It takes years though. We won't see justice served very soon if we go that route. But Duda, a prosecuted singer, finally got it after several years. 8 years.
Witam, pan Artur.
Hello, Mr. Arthur? Yes. Okay, let's get you to work. I just want to note that I require medical care. I take medication regularly and I have a medical attestation for this. So I'm asking for one person to accompany me in case my well-being deteriorates.
Na wypadek pogorszenia stanu zdrowia. Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. I would also like to ask if I could volunteer to help here today.
Tutaj w tym miejscu chciałbym pomóc.
Charytatywnie to ja nic na tym
I don't know anything about volunteering. I don't know if that's possible. You don't accept volunteers?
Ja, proszę pana, nie.
I personally don't. If you, sir, wish to start, please follow me.
Tyle. Dziękujemy państwu.
Thank you. Ultimately, one person was allowed in as medical help. The rest of us had to wait on the outside.
Murami skansenu.
Ja z Pawłem Skopnikiem poszedłem do
My friend and I went to the management's office to ask if we could volunteer to do some work alongside the convicts.
wolontaryjnej pracy razem ze skazańcami.
How did it go? We talked with the director, but unfortunately, we cannot volunteer to work to help the convicts.
Bardzo przerażone.
Behind the doors, we heard a very nervous phone conversation with most likely the vice director, who, along with the employees, are trying to figure out how to approach this situation, because people want to volunteer with the convicts. They don't need volunteers, but the mere fact that there is something like this happening here scared the management of the museum.
Całego tego skansenu.
Z niewiadomych powodów
For unknown reasons, security was called.
Stoimy na zewnątrz i
We're waiting outside, that's it, nothing is happening here. As far as I know, you trespassed inside, or something like that. We didn't trespass, we talked with the director. She invited us to her office, we didn't trespass. You've got false information, we didn't trespass anywhere. As you can see, we're standing outside. Our brooms are to help with cleaning, they're not weapons. The security was later confused by what was happening here, since there were 3 women and 2 men who stood peacefully. They drove to the end of the street and waited for about 10-15 minutes. They saw that nothing was happening, so they backed out and left. This is a man who was pitched to us as a third rolled in a glitter. And everyone can see that now. But back then they used to say that my words were too harsh. They couldn't understand why we were against the peace government. Because of these and few other statements about President Duda, you were sentenced to 8 months of forced labor. Do you agree with the court's decision that this is an insult to the president? It's a comparison. I said that during the election campaign, candidate Duda was pitched to us as. So it's a comparison. The same man, President Duda, said that Poles who go and watch Agnieszka Holland's movie are pigs. The president is allowed to call Poles pigs, but when I talk about President Duda's campaign in 2015 and say that he was presented as fake candidate, well, I'm not allowed to say that. Mind you, it's just a political commentator's opinion, to which I have a right. The man responsible for the convicts said that I can accompany my dad as medical help. We were on our way to the designated workplace when he received a phone call. And so we went back to the office. The first thing that struck me was his complete change in attitude. At first he was quite favorable towards us. Then you could see fear starting to creep in. He told us that the museum didn't agree with my presence or with the banner on my dad's back. We also don't agree that you wear that banner on your back. I will call my lawyer if you don't mind. Why? Because I want to know if this is a restriction of my civil rights. Hey Andrzej, the man that's responsible for me here consulted everything with the director. He informed me about the decision of the museum. I understand that this is the official decision of the museum, correct? Yes. Well then, the director takes responsibility for it. So, I cannot be accompanied by medical help, and I cannot wear my shirt, striving for freedom, with an inscription on the back, convicted for criticizing the Catholic Church and peace. Isn't this a violation of my civil rights? And so, how is Mr. Chojecki supposed to be dressed? In normal work clothes. So please tell me, where is that written, in which law? I don't know, but he is not allowed with that banner on his back. Well, is there something wrong with that banner? You can look. We don't want such slogans. I understand that you don't want these kinds of slogans, but you are not the owners of Mr. Chojecki's shirt or Mr. Chojecki, are you? Mr. Chojecki is obligated to do unpaid and supervised work, but it seems to me that the regulations do not specify how he should or shouldn't be dressed. If not, then please don't make unlawful decisions about how he should be dressed. Otherwise, in a moment, you could very well tell him that he has to be in his underwear, as that is the museum's decisions. Meanwhile, Pawel Chojecki showed up to work and is completing his duties. I would like to inform you that he came with a group of people and I would like to contact the probation officer. I'm letting Mr. Chojecki off from work today. Then please write it down for us on paper that Mr. Chojecki showed up and that this day may be accounted for. Okay, if you believe that he can't work, then please put it in writing with your name and that you're letting him off from work today. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye. In that case, I'm waiting for the written statement. Okay, so thank you for today. No, I'm waiting for a written statement. I can't move from here. I have a court order. Do you understand that, sir? According to the teaching of the Catholic Church, the so-called transubstantiation happens when the priest reads out loud, since he can't even say the words from the top of his head. Because imagine what would happen if he made a mistake. Jesus wouldn't descend from heaven. He would tell the priest, "Again, buddy, wrong spell." According to the court of first instance, these words offend the religious feelings of Catholics. What do you think about this? This is a presentation of Catholic theology, in a humorous way, of course. It was a program for youth, there were young people there. I'm just showing that it's a superstition contrary to the Bible. I'm entitled to say that. There is absolutely nothing to complain about here. I'm presenting the Catholic theology as it is. The fact that it's stupid is not my fault. This is serious. Failure to comply with this order means prison for me. But this is in a monthly period. Sir, our colleague here decides where you are to work. But I have a set date. But our colleague says not today. Then I need it on paper. My lawyer said it clearly. Not on paper. My colleague will decide on what days you will complete the work. Today, all of your hours will be accounted for. But I'm asking for a written statement. I don't take your word for it. There won't be any written statement. My colleague will check off the hours. Do we go see our boss or what? Hello, Andrzej. The men here want me to leave the site. I'm telling them that I won't leave without a written statement about showing up today, or else they'll put me in prison for not showing up. No one will put you in prison. But you don't decide that, sir. What's the problem of issuing the document? He doesn't want to give me on paper what he was just saying. You are on speaker, he can hear you. Why don't you want to give it on paper? I'm not able to do that today. I have my employees, I'm doing physical jobs. I also wanted to consult this with the probation officer. Are you even entitled to act on behalf of the museum? No. Then why are you telling Pawel Chojecki to leave on behalf of the museum? It's not on behalf of the museum. Then on whose behalf? I'm saying that I want to consult this with the probation officer. I don't even know who you are, we don't even know your name, and you're telling Mr. Chojecki to leave. And later it will turn out that no one knows who you are and that Pawel Chojecki didn't show up here today. I've seen cases like this more than one. On a piece of paper with your name on it, please give a declaration that you told Pawel Chojecki to leave, and if not, then Pawel Chojecki showed up for work today. Okay, alright, we are waiting for a written decision. Thanks. Oh, he's coming. They don't want me here. I have it on paper. What happened? Well, they don't want me here. I have a document that says that I showed up. I don't know what will happen next. I did my part, but you can see how the state functions under the peace government. Even when you show up to serve your sentence, you can't. Of course, the staff tried to do their duties somehow. But they didn't understand why I wasn't accepting my sentence with humility to not make things worse. This shows me that many Poles still don't understand what it means to be a free Pole. Tea for Grandpa. Thanks. They said they'll get in touch and that I have to wait for a call. So we'll wait. What can we do? But there is a risk that no one will accept you. You know, you can tell that this case is a hot potato for them. Especially since there is the election campaign and people are growing more and more furious with the peace government.
Jak się w tym wszystkim czułeś?
How did you feel with all of this? Were you scared? No, they were
Oni
scared.
się bali, a ja wiedziałem, że
I
jestem
know that I'm an honest, innocent man
który został
who has been treated unfairly.
I wszyscy to wiedzą,
Everyone knows it,
ale to się dalej
but it
dzieje.
still goes on.
Od czego zaczęła się ta sprawa?
How did this case begin?
Od naszego
It began
sukcesu.
with our success. In 2016, we started daily broadcasting of the informational and biblical program on Against the Tide TV. It started to spread with hundreds of thousands of views. And then a huge wave of hate appeared on the internet. At first, we thought it was just spontaneous outbursts of individual people, but later it became obvious to us that it was an organized initiative. There were websites and YouTube channels created to persecute us. These people resorted to crimes. They threatened me with death many times. They threatened my family, my children, even my grandchildren. One of them destroyed the entrance to our headquarters and poured feces all over it. When that didn't work and we continued broadcasting, they teamed up and didn't hide it. The nationalist media also participated in this. One of the representatives of the Confederation Party here in Lublin banded together with them to submit a report to the prosecutor's office that I had allegedly offended their religious feelings. Our television's film reached the NNW Film Festival under the patronage of Andrzej Duda. Today's gala will be hosted by Magdalena Uchaniuk and Marcin Kwaśny. How did you react to the fact that this festival is under the patronage of President Andrzej Duda? This is a person who has nothing in common with freedom. He either doesn't understand it, or he deliberately fights against it. A pastor, for the first time in Polish history, is convicted for criticizing Catholic dogmas and the authority of peace, including Duda's authority. Duda had the opportunity to stop this farce and judicial crime twice. Once I asked him to say that he supports freedom of speech, as he promised during the election campaign, the one before he was president, that he would abolish the article on offending the president. Every citizen has the right to judge. Every citizen also has the right to criticize. Not every citizen has to agree with me, approve of my actions, or speak positively about them. He said, let the courts do their job. He will not take a stand. I gave him a second chance this year, in January. I decided to ask him to use it, not to pardon me because I am not guilty, but to use, as the supreme state official, the power to pardon and close this case. In the past, he pardoned criminals in this way, who are now ministers. He pardoned pedophiles. Well, I say then maybe he will grant a pardon to a pastor and stop this farce. Within a few weeks, I quickly received a shameful reply from President Duda. who is the patron of this festival today. In the pastor's case, I will not use the power to pardon. Shame on you, Duda. Are you scared that this condemning verdict will excite them to go further and fulfill the threats against you? These are very determined people, because they have been persecuting me, my church and my loved ones for many years now. They are already ganging up on the internet to set up another trial for me, so I will be a recidivist and land in prison. Sir, what name do you appear under on Facebook? I refuse to answer this question since it could expose me to the danger of criminal liability. If you could turn back time, would you behave the same way? Yes, of course. This film is personal to us. The main character, Miss Marianna Krasnodębska, is turning 100 years old in 10 days. During the war, her whole family hid Jews and helped them in the transit ghetto in Piaski. We sympathized with them and helped them because we were very close-knit with each other. I'm also going to introduce Mr. Marek Franczak, son of Józef Franczak, the last fighting partisan, Lalek. We are talking about heroes, about the rebellious, the unwavering, the ones damned from the past. But let's ask ourselves a question, and this is against the Tide TV's and this film's mission. Are we building a Poland today where such rebellious, unwavering, damned individuals have their place? Look, I have this shirt. Convicted of criticizing the church and peace. This is happening today. Raised in a patriotic family, serving Poland all my life, I was made by the authorities, not the communists, but by peace, into a criminal for preaching Protestant sermons, criticizing the Catholic Church. Ultimately, that's how the Protestants originated, and criticizing what the peace government does wrong, but also praising what it does right. And for that, I became a criminal. Don't take away freedom of speech and religion. I'm talking to the ruling majority, because then we will lose Poland. Only a Poland free for all can thrive and survive. Thank you. Would you last those 3 hours again? I was ready to stand till 6. They won't get rid of us that quickly. Just after 9 p.m. there were 1,000 people standing in front of the premises. Poland woke up on October the 15th. I mean, it turned out that Poland was already awake.
In Poland this weekend, the Polish people turned out in huge numbers.
The scale exceeded all expectations. This is a sensational result. This is an even higher result than in 1989. At this moment, the turnout is the largest in the history of the Third Republic of Poland, 74.38%. Did the record turnout surprise you? We were pleased that so many Poles think the same way. It was truly a celebration of civil society. It was a big surprise. I also saw that the Polish diaspora participated in large numbers. It was a great joy, and I remember that when we had an election evening here in Against the Tide TV Live, I was very moved by the fact that almost 70% of the young demographic went to vote. Welcome to Against the Tide TV. It's Monday, October the 16th, and we are continuing our election evening. Poland woke up on October the 15th. Well, actually, it turned out that the Poland was already awoken, because it woke up earlier. Praise God, I am literally so stoked about what is happening. The trial of Pastor Pawel Chojecki is underway. He is accused, among other things, for insulting the religious feelings of Catholics and President Duda. The prosecutors are presenting another piece of evidence in this case. A priest from Pomerania claimed, "Oh, poor us, oh, poor people, I would build a church for the faithful, but I have no place to do that. Oh, President, there is a plot of land nearby, so maybe you should sell it." Will the President sell it to the church? Come on, you should give it to us. We are so poor, we are simple people, we serve people. All right, give it to them. Well, they gave it. Ha! I got it. Supermarket, Who Street. Starting price is 2 millions. The parish priest. We have a taker. Bam. What should we buy now? A Porsche? Or what's worse? The Catholic Church who is plundering both you and me today, not somewhere in the dark Middle Ages. The court decided to postpone the hearing. It's all clear now. I announced my resolution. I was at every demonstration supporting Pastor Pawel Chojecki at the Court of Appeal, because I do not agree with such an injustice. For me, and for every person who loves freedom and freedom of speech, it was ridiculous that the trial was taking place at all. At every hearing before the Court of Appeal in Lublin, there were at least several dozen people. People came to support Dad, to be with him on that day, even coming from Europe, from different countries, from Germany, from Switzerland, and also from the Netherlands. I was astonished by such a high turnout. We informed people. People were really interested. They showed support. Often court employees who were leaving personally asked me why we are here. There were also families with small children. I was moved looking at those children. This will factor into their civil attitude in the future. From trial to trial, all these people and my dad began to create a movement together. And the movement we saw later, striving for freedom, was a continuation of what was happening before the Court of Appeal in Lublin. Freedom picnics were being held in front of the court. It was such a wow moment for me. For us it was a year ago. Now, during the election, it showed up all over Poland. 3, 2, 1. We have the official results of the parliamentary election. The opposition won. Now there will be poverty and misery, a new Poland, democracy, peace removed from power. Mr. Cookies says that we allowed ourselves to be manipulated by not taking the ballot to the referendum. Today, October the 15th, communism ended in Poland, and what I've been saying over the last few years are just jokes. How will the election result on October the 15th affect your trial, your situation? in a decisive way. It makes me smile, because not so long ago we said along with attorney Turczyn that there is only one way for a cassation of this sentence – ombudsman. However, it turned out that there is still another person in the country who can file such a cassation. Then we said that this way is pointless, through Ziobro. But as of today, I have hope that there will be a new Attorney General soon. The Prosecutor's Office, the Supreme Court, the Constitutional Court. What about these institutions? The separation of the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General indicates two separate people. The Attorney General has the option of an expedited application for a cassation of this verdict. And I think that the new prosecutor, contrary to what Ziobro's Prosecutor's Office did, will demand justice. I will tell you honestly that I take personal satisfaction in the fact that Ziobro will no longer be the Minister of Justice, the Attorney General. I feel great satisfaction. Is this a letter from the probation officer? Yes, Mrs. Grażyna Milaniuk urgently requests my presence at the beginning of November to submit explanations. Attendance is mandatory. But what explanations was she talking about? I don't know, because she should have called the museum or the lady from Peace who runs the museum, so that she can explain why I was prevented from completing the work. I showed up when I should have. But in a t-shirt with the label "Convicted of criticizing peace and the church." That's why they didn't accept you there. And where does it say that coming in a t-shirt with a label "Convicted of criticizing peace and the church" is banned? What are you expecting from this visit to the probation officer? I don't know what to expect. She will either appoint me to a new institution where I have to do this work, or I don't know. I have no clue. Did you say that your haters report to the probation officer to harm you? They brag about it. As far as I am concerned, what I deduced from a conversation with a court probation officer is that he does not intend on putting up with Chojecki in any way. Their goal is to manipulate this case so much that the museum will refuse to allow me to do my work, to make it look like I did something wrong, that I evade, that I don't show up, all so they can put me in prison, that you are evading community service. At some point, the probation officer's patience will end and she'll find that this is an unreformable delinquent and will simply write a request to the court to change the penalty of restriction of liberty to imprisonment, which means something will happen that we could not have even dreamed of. The court is that big black thing there, in front of you, on the right side, smaller than Zeus. This is your second visit to the probation officer. What kind of person is she? If this lady has a sound conscience and some life experience, then she should know who she is dealing with from what the haters are doing, and that this trial has nothing to do with justice. It's a political setup. Look, I'm on sick leave. She called me for the 3rd of November and promptly went on sick leave. Oh well, let's go to the office. My name is Pawel Chojecki. I received a summons to Officer Mrs. Milaniuk. I am sentenced to forced labor for criticizing the Catholic Church and peace. I understand that I am waiting for further correspondence or a phone call. Yes, the probation officer returns on the 13th. I think she will contact you, sir. Thank you, goodbye. What an interesting coincidence. The day after the election. So everyone is afraid after all. See how it works? You could tell she knew about the case, didn't she? Who doesn't know about the case here? And how are things with the ombudsman? Because we sent 2 applications there. You sent one and we sent the other one as a church, supported by a petition, according to the politicians' opinions, etc. Do we have any answers? Yes, the spokesman stepped up to the task and replied that everything with the verdict is in order. So your cassation application was rejected, and we are still waiting on the social request. I don't think there will be an answer to this. You can see the changes in quality when it comes to the work of Ombudsman in relation to Professor Bodnar and in relation to what it is now. Yes, when Mr. Bodnar was the Ombudsman, we were already inquiring for legal assistance from his office. He wrote a letter wherein he drew the court's attention to this case. I am in touch with Protestant communities, and we talked among other things about Article 196 of the Criminal Code. I think that this law should definitely be limited in its application. Secondly, I would like to point out that the prosecutors must be unbiased in these cases. It simply can't be that the prosecutor uses these cases for political purposes.
Już mamy...
Dziękujemy za komunikat.
We are online with Czarek Kłosowicz. Yes, we just left court. As you can see, Pastor Pawel Chojecki is with me. The court postponed the announcement of the verdict to June 5th at 1 p.m., not taking into account the fact that Pastor Pawel Chojecki has a scheduled international trip. The court stated that there is no possibility for another date. We are about to listen to what Paweł will tell us. I think this trial triggers something in every decent person, an element of disagreement. I may not like what he says, I may disagree with him, he may have even exaggerated in places or offended me, but what they did to him is a word that starts with F. You could say that here in the Court of Appeal was the end of your trial. But let's go back to the beginning for a moment. That is, to the district court, not so far away. I demand for Chojecki to be pursued and punished as well as inspected. I suspect the possibility of mental illness in him. I demand the equipment he uses to broadcast be secured so that he cannot continue his initiative. Do you confirm these testimonies? Yes, I confirm completely. I am a devout Catholic whose goal is to convert others. This is my apostolic duty. We are dealing with a group of people who, for whatever reason, are reluctant towards Paweł Chojecki and do not want him to exist in the public eye. Paweł Bieganowski, production worker. Grzegorz Wysok, historian. Adam Lex, unemployed. Tadeusz Pasztyka, computer graphic designer. Elżbieta Kowalska, translator. Michał Błaszczak, student. Radosław Patlewicz, writer, publicist. I hope that whatever the verdict in this case will be, it will lead the defendant to come to his senses, because this is not only about his body, this is also about his soul. As a Catholic, I believe that he can come to his senses and convert. I was only there once, thank God for that. Exactly. Why? Because I knew it was designed to humiliate me, to flog and destroy me, to spit in my face. Radek, you were at all the hearings in the district court, correct? Yes. Instead of chasing away the haters, You could say the Polish court abused an honorable man. It was difficult. And when you met those haters who were, let's say, the victims, did they say anything to you? Were there any interactions between you? Some woman approached me. She was calling me names, but I can't remember the exact words anymore. I think she called us parasites. There are dozens of you parasites there, scroungers. The pastor was convicted mainly on the basis of an expert's testimony. Yes, but as she said herself at the time, she didn't watch any of Paul's sermons. How can someone not watch and give a verdict solely on the basis of a few extracted clips? It was so absurd that it seemed the court would listen, yes, but would ultimately reject the testimony. But things turned out differently. Your Honor, if I may add anything, I did not watch any of the television programs available on the internet. I worked only on the transcripts made available to me.
Na udostępnionych mi stenogramach.
The prosecutor's office searched for a long time for a scientist who would want to do something like this. The investigation was extended with the consent of the prosecutor, who now directly reports to Ziobro. He ordered to keep digging, to keep searching. Finally, they found Przybył Sadowską. Calling a person who appeared there a phantom can be considered offensive. It's as if I would stand here and say that Jesus is a ghost because he rose from the dead and tried to compare him to Casper the Ghost. It was a farce. She started going on about some nonsense about Casper the Ghost or something. That's the reason I offended religious feelings. We, on the other hand, had 5 scientists, 3 with professorial titles. Everything was rejected by the same judge. For example, Professor Bartosz, a former priest, Jesuit, professor, wrote a statement that these accusations can be thrown in the trash. As for the proposal of the appointment of another expert, the court sees no reason to appoint another expert to check whether other people who specialize in this area have the same or a different opinion. If there are no other proposals, I'm closing the court proceedings and giving the floor to the prosecutor. Your Honor, criticism in this public debate is useful, desired, but under certain conditions, so that it is not aggressive, malicious, slanderous, that it does not seek to harass someone, that it is simply honest and straight to the point. Freedom of speech is for the disrespectful. Freedom of speech is for those who are on the border, who are shaping the border. For those people, there is freedom of speech. In my opinion, the court should stand in defense of these people. The defendant has exceeded the boundaries of acceptable criticism, hence his statements cannot benefit from the protection provided by the Constitution. Everyone can criticize, but I have the impression that allowing criticism is not liked by anyone. I file for finding the defendant as guilty of the act charged with the indictment and the imposition of punishment, 10 months imprisonment, with a conditional suspension of the execution of such a sentence for a period of 2 years. That's why, bearing in mind that there may be possible criticism, we have to do this in a way for there to be no criticism, only applause and acceptance. Thank you, Your Honor. Auxiliary Prosecutor Radosław Patlewicz. Your Honor, I am filing for an imprisonment sentence of 1 year for the defendant, with a suspension of a trial period of 3 years. Good morning. Good morning. If you could pick me 5 of these most blossomed yellow ones. It's weird that I am getting yellow flowers for my wife, but she likes that color. But why weird? Some say that they signify jealousy or something. Your Honor, in terms of insulting the Polish nation, I have known Pawel Chojecki for 30 years. When I came to study in Lublin at the Faculty of Law at the Maria Curie Skłodowska University, I met Pawel Chojecki. Since then I have known this man as a unique patriot. He has been leading engaged social initiatives for 30 years in order to draw attention to important problems in the social life of Poles. I am not surprised by Pawel Chojecki, who stated in his explanations that if someone accuses him of insulting the Polish nation, it is an insult to him, because that man does nothing but fight with his words to make this a better nation to live in. This man says in every program that he does it all for the Polish nation, to live in abundance, for the Polish nation to be safe. In every program, at any place and time, and yet the prosecutor has accused him of insulting the Polish nation. I ask for the courts to acquit him. Thank you very much. I consider Pawel Chojecki guilty for publicly insulting people of the Catholic faith because of their religious affiliation. In addition, he insults the religious feelings of other people, namely people of the Catholic faith, as well as publicly insulted the Polish nation and the President of the Republic of Poland, Andrzej Duda. Up until this point, I've had a bit of an impression that I'm participating in some kind of staged scene, that this is not actually happening, and this verdict made me realize they truly did this. It is such a disappointment that we really do live in a country where justice does not matter. For this act, on the basis of the above-mentioned provisions, I condemn the defendant to a sentence of 8 months of restriction of liberty with the obligation to perform unpaid, controlled work for social purposes and encumber the defendant with proceeding expenses in the amount of 20,989. You have some ideals about your country, don't you? That such wickedness, such perversity cannot happen here. Somewhere, someone will notice, fix it, and it will be fine, right? And it crashed. In this Catholic communist nation, all this can be done. There are no standards here, no values, no sanctity, no justice. This is a state. It's not even a feeling, it's a burden. These words are spoken. The President is the guardian of the interests of Moscow and Berlin. And these types of statements are certainly disrespectful statements. I think I'm a little more melancholic, meaning sad. It's harder for me to just enjoy ordinary things. Well, because my vision of this country and patriotism was shattered and splattered in mud. In fact, the defendant attacks the Church as an institution. It was a deliberate depreciation of the Catholic faith and their doctrines. One could quote, "Eucharistic miracles are nonsense." Only a depreciation of the Corpus Christi as a ritual recognized in the Catholic Church. The court sees hope in that the defendant will come to his senses, that even if he will want to criticize the Catholic Church, he will need to weigh his words. We experienced the evil of this country, and this is why we acted for freedom. That is the reason for these elections on October 15th. That is the reason for the Striving for Freedom movement. What else will happen, we don't know. Thank you so much. In my own church building, we replaced the windows and removed bricks from our rooms multiple times. That was from my experience in Chełm. I think those stones and broken windows illustrate the reality in Poland. Excuse me, do you believe that the conviction of Pastor Chojecki will be a threat? A threat to freedom of speech, yes, and to democracy in our country. I don't really see a connection here with these stones or some bricks. Well, it most likely wasn't Protestants who threw them at us. So on one hand, this situation aroused fear that the people of faith would... Some people feared that we might be restricted in expressing our freedom of religion.
Obawa przed tym, że możemy być ograniczani w możliwości wolności wyznania.
What about the others? Others were simply concerned that it's come to this, that pastors are being summoned to court for their statements. In your opinion, could the initiative of Pastor Pawel Chojecki be classed as incitement to religious hatred and religious intolerance? Not at all. Protestants all around the world have this in common, that the Bible is the only source of God's revelation. And secondly, salvation is solely by grace through faith, not by human works, as Apostle Paul writes, so that no one may boast. In my opinion, Pastor Chojecki is braver than I am. And I, maybe because of the threat of a trial like this. Nonetheless, I want to say that I think there need to be people like him. I'm a little ashamed that I don't have such courage myself. The deadline to send a complaint to the European Court is slowly expiring. We have until the beginning of January. The complaint is in the process of being written. I think it should be ready by next week. This is the preliminary version, in a basic outline. What will this verdict give us, even if the outcome is positive for us after so many years of this European tribunal? In a few years it will turn out that you were right. So you could say that we are supposedly under the jurisdiction of this European Court of Human Rights, but a man can be sullied by the court in Lublin and nothing can be done about it. Yes, yes. We'll be finishing up now because we are moving to court, where the final speeches in the trial of Pastor Pawel Chojecki are taking place. In the first instance, the pastor was sentenced to 8 months of community service. He was also ordered to pay over 20,000 PLN costs of the proceedings. The prosecutor's office accused him, among other things, of insulting the religious feelings of Catholics. Now we will give the defendant a chance to speak. Please go ahead, Mr. Pawel Chojecki. Your Honor, I was rather silent in the courtroom for most of this trial. The fact that the prosecutor's office of the Republic of Poland drags a pastor with an impeccable reputation from court to court is a huge insult to me, to my church and all the Protestants in Poland. The final speech was powerful. I was proud of my dad. I saw that he was not afraid at all. He spoke with such great confidence and courage. He spoke without beating around the bush, without being humbled and apologizing for being alive. I remember my heart beating so fast when I watched this. I didn't go to any other church. I didn't go to destroy any objects of worship or anything else. I didn't interrupt anyone's religious activities. I said what I am obligated to by scripture in my Protestant church and on my Protestant TV. And the Constitution of the Republic of Poland guarantees me freedom of speech. That's why I want Your Honor to know that these people are not the wronged victims here. It is my church who is wronged. It is my church who is being harassed by them. And yet, I'm the one sitting here as the criminal. Lower your voice a bit, please. I was in the courtroom at that time. And at one point, I had the impression that Paweł was hovering over this whole situation above the ground. He spoke from the bottom of his heart. He expressed all the pain of a man who devoted his whole life to preaching the gospel, to bringing people to Christ. But is so misunderstood. Your Honor, please understand my emotions. My only crime in life is a few fines. I have an impeccable reputation, which is necessary in practicing my profession, just like Your Honors. What is happening here is a denial of justice, because they were the ones that attacked us, and even my grandson, calling him Beelzebub's son. Those who are sitting here threatened me with death. My daughters were publicly threatened with acid. Saying that I offended any of these people is a mockery of the justice system. I would call them haters, not victims, Your Honor. The insulted religious feelings of Bieganowski. I'd rather watch porn than listen to the gospel. That man wrote this. This is the God-fearing man that had his religious feelings hurt, whom the public prosecutor considered a victim. The second victim, Mr. Wysok. This person, Mr. Wysok, wrote on the internet that Chojecki should get hit with a brick. Another sensitive man in terms of religious feelings. I request not taking into account the appeal of the defendant's defense attorney. Behaviors that violate the rights of victims cannot be justified under the pretext of freedom of speech. The arrogant, prideful attitude of the defendant should be reflected in an adequate sentence, and since the judgment of the court of first instance related to social issues did not cause the defendant to reflect on his hateful behavior, he should be forced to do so by the real threat of imprisonment, a sentence of imprisonment with a conditional suspension of execution for a probation period. I delivered a letter to the court from a murderer in prison. Nothing spoke to him. He read books, listened to various sermons. There was a minister in prison, but he turned on the Against the Tide TV and Pastor Chojecki, and this changed his life. The High Court has it on file. I speak to such people, and that I said fart, that I said phantom, that I said dung, quoting Apostle Paul, this is my crime? No moral person will agree to this. Jesus said, you don't know how to discern, therefore by their fruit you will know them. Please take a look at what is happening in front of the court. Are these criminals, hateful people, people who attack others? This is the fruit of my service to Jesus, the reason for which I am sitting here today. Thank you. It's hard for me to say anything. I am very moved when I listen to my father's speech. I realize even more how much evil has been done. On the one hand, there is this grief and rage at what the court and the prosecutor's office has done. And on the other hand, internally, there is such pride. A quote, most likely from the Anglo-Saxon world, comes to my mind. Whoever fears God will not fear people, and I associated it very strongly with this speech. I uphold the appealed verdict. All of the appeals filed in this case proved to be without merit. The Court of Appeal does not find that the penalty imposed by the District Court, namely 8 months of restriction of liberty, was either too grossly severe or too grossly lenient. I wouldn't have expected that after such verdict, there is this optimism.
Że po takim wyroku, nie, jest taka...
Like, oh well, so what? Now I will be the president. I will run for president.
Teraz prezydentem, nie? Będę startował na prezydenta, nie?
I talked to him the day before and asked my dad, what will you do if they convict you? He said that whatever happens, I know one thing. I will announce that I'm running for president in 2025. My first reaction was disbelief, laughter. What was even happening here? My first thought, very good. Let them be afraid. They won't push the pastor around. He'll show them what he's capable of. I don't know if I can even say that. I found this to be a very, very good move, because indeed all the media wrote about it. This was the moment, that we would not be wringing our hands here, we were just going to move on, move forward. This needs to be such a piercing cry for freedom, that there is an injustice happening here, a protest. And that's exactly when I had the thought that at the moment of my sentencing, I would announce my candidacy for the 2025 presidential election. What kind of Poland do I dream of? I don't want anyone telling me how I should live, how I should organize my backyard, where I should build my house, how to sleep, what to talk about, what to think about, simply that they would just leave us alone. I don't expect any great care from the state, just for it to be as fair as possible. I dream of Poland where neither Protestants nor people of different faiths, nor people who do not recognize any god or deities, are not afraid to say what they think, criticize when they feel a need to, and everyone is guaranteed freedom. A righteous Poland, of course. I would like to see a Poland like that one day. When Jurek Dajuk sang Marek Grechuta's song Freedom at the benefit concert for Paul, I found that I agree with Grechuta's words, which are captured in the song. I would like to live in a free country, where just like in the song, everyone could grow like a branch on one tree, a branch reaching for the sun in different directions.
Wolność lśni wśród gałęzi wielkich drzew, które pną się w słońce, każda w swoją stronę. Wolność brzmi jak radosny ludzi śmiech, którzy wolność swą zdobyli na obronę. Zwycięstwa mądrości, prawdy i miłości, spokoju, szczęścia, zdrowia i godności. Wolność to diament do oszlifowania, a zabłyśnie blaskiem nie do opisania. Mo wolność ją wymyślił dla nas Bóg, aby człowiek wreszcie mógł w niebie się zbudzić.
You have seen my story. I hope that God will add further great chapters to what is happening in Poland. If they did it to me, they can do it to you too. But if we join together to protect each other's freedom, then united, they will not defeat us. That is why it is so important you now share the link so that you can encourage your friends to watch this story. And so we can meet again later in our collective efforts for freedom in Poland. See you soon.